you to join the conversation. Go up on WhatsApp and send your messages into this number 0809 4440981. And of course, we are up on Twitter, so make sure you use that hashtag Business Express 981 and tag Rotas. He is at Rotanquote up on Twitter. Okay, Rotas, so what do we have?
Yeah, so there's been for anyone who's tried to purchase fuel on either Awolowo Road, certain points of Lekki, and I think a couple spots on the mainland for Lagos, and also in parts of Abuja, and I think Port Harcourt as well. There have been fuel queues, and they've been popping up since Saturday is when I first noticed them. If there are fuel queues, then there's a supply issue. The fuel, of course, that's refined petroleum comes into the country, and then it lands. It's taken to the depots. The trucks are then distributed across the country, where they transport the fuel to fuel stations. 96% of cargo that's moved around this country goes by road. So that's the reason why you see lots of tankers on the road. So if you have fuel queues, then there's a supply issue. So the first thing you have to wonder is why isn't that particular fuel station selling any fuel? So if you've got 3 stations on your street or 2 stations on your street and they're packed, it's probably because 1 or 2 of them is not selling and only one is selling. That's why everybody's rushing over to that particular one. I reached out to corporate comms people at the NNPC, didn't get any confirmation as to what's going on, but I know This Day newspaper has been doing some investigation since yesterday, and I think it's on their front page today, where they say that there's high sulfuric content that's contaminating the present fuel supplies that's in the about 100 million liters or so. And so as a result of that, the oil marketers have been advised not to sell any fuel, and that because apparently it can damage your engines. And I think a couple people, from what I'm seeing on WhatsApp, but no personal contacts of mine, they're saying that their engines have been damaged as a result of the fuel that they purchased. Now, I got a little worried because I purchased fuel. I filled up my tank on Sunday. But I mean, I hope the engine's still fine so far. So the issue is they're saying that that's what's causing this. So they were fuel retail the downstream retail players were advised not to sell any fuel because bad. That's the story. But in addition to that, it's being speculated that oil marketers are taking advantage of the situation in order to hoard. On a Wall Road yesterday, I went to talk to a fuel station attendant at one of these stations. He said that they had hiked the price a couple stations down the road. I didn't drive down to confirm because I was heading somewhere else. I just wanted to find out why the queues are so bad. But it's being reported that they're hoarding. Some of them are using the opportunity to try to hike the price. Remember, there was a whole talk of fuel subsidies being removed by June, and then the federal government backtracked. So they're wanting to use this opportunity to hike up. Although June is not here, we're still in February, so June's pretty far away. But
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, Africa's largest crude oil producer should not be going through fuel scarcity issues. Also,
Hold on, fuel scarcity issues again.
Exactly. It's just not.
So what kind of message does this send? Because
well, I mean, so if you have to wonder about how, according to reports, how you can have this much fuel, up to 100 million liters, contaminated, because if you go by if you model which we're using, which is that the NNPC is the sole importer of petroleum, refined petroleum into the country. Then, if something's wrong to their network, then there's a problem. So the message, or rather, the takeaway from this is that we have to return to a model where other players are allowed to bring in fuel, refined petrol into the country. I mean, you can imagine think of anything else that you buy. I don't know, chewing gum, milk, or shoes. Imagine if only one person was allowed to, if you're not domestically producing it, which unfortunately we're not for. or rather refined crude, if only one supplier was bringing an item into the country, if they suffer any issues like this, then you're going to see supply trouble across the nation. So we have to bring back other players into the market in order to bring fuel into the country. However, the issue is, of course, the cost at which they'll be able to bring it in, forcing them to sell it more than 165 a liter, which now brings you back to your subsidy troubles.
All right, now we've got this message or messages in from Gbenga Akomo, who says the scarcity has spread to my neck of the woods. He goes on to say, why do those in charge allow stuff like this to happen? We heard they bought some contaminated fuel, but are any heads going to roll for this?
Mm.
He also says they're hoarding. Trust Nigerians to exploit anything to deal with Nigerians, and the oil marketers have been at it for so long. How come we haven't heard from NNPC?
It's troubling. I mean, again, I did reach out to the NNPC and I asked, and you people are looking for an explanation. They want to know what's going on. You are the sole supplier. What's happening? And it's a radio silence, as they say, for the last few hours. So I mean, no, we're at this point. Now that it's at least on this day newspaper, if other publications pick it up, that will apply pressure to the NNPC, and they're going to have to say something at some point because again, if you go around, it's a difficult situation for people to have to start leaving their cars overnight at fuel stations in order to get fuel. So
see, Rotus, when this thing, I just started noticing the queues on Sunday, and
yep,
it was concerning. And yeah, you didn't. So you will now go up and say it now became a conversation point. Oh, what's going on with petrol? Why are there queues?
Right.
Only for us to finally get some news about this. What yesterday?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a good thing to see. I mean, look at the just to use this as an analogy, look at how news is disseminated in Nigeria. The news business is private. Smooth FM is a private station. This Day is a private newspaper. Guardian is private. Vanguard's private. I mean, it's the private sector that disseminates news in Nigeria. Can you imagine if the federal government of Nigeria was the sole disseminator of news? We'd be like North Korea or Russia,
We'd
right?
be so happy on paper. It would be unbelievable.
Right. So when news comes in from, I mean, random thing, Joe Rogan, for instance, I hear they're offering him $100 million to leave Spotify, some right-wing station. I got that from a foreign news entity, but other publications in Nigeria have picked up on the news and they're disseminating it to the public. Now, if the federal government had its own intentions or didn't want the real news to come through, they could twist it. So it's the same thing with oil and the crude oil supply. You can't have a single supplier for refined petroleum in your country. It has to be you have to have other players come into the mix, and in order for them to come into the mix, they will not do it unless the cost at which they sell fuel is higher than the cost of them acquiring the fuel to sell. So it's amazing. This is how many years have we been battling this thing? We're still back to, in 2022, pre-election year, back to where we are.
Since before time began.
Exactly. And it's just something that that has to be, addressed. And I mean, while we're on this subject, there's still the issue of a 3 trillion naira subsidy bill that needs to be, unearthed from somewhere in order to fund it. The president still feels that if you hike fuel, you're going to affect the poor. But diesel, I hear diesel now, it's unregulated. Diesel is what, 300, over 300, touching 400 a liter. It's nuts. So if you're deregulating that, and people who use diesel generators and businesses that require diesel are facing those price crunches, who are you really helping? So you have to ask yourself those particular questions when it comes to whether or not the logic behind capping PMS makes sense.
And this rate is, the question is going to be, how do you hurt the least amount of people? Because I feel either way, somebody's going to be hurt.
Yeah, because look, the people who consume the most fuel in this country are, individuals with multiple cars, multiple homes that use generators, and businesses. So there's only the cushion. And look, and I understand because they use the inflation metric as a reason for not wanting to remove the subsidy. There's going to be the pass-through effect to inflation. Inflation is already at double digits. It jumped in December. We're going to get figures for January in about a week or so. So I understand that, but you can either gradually remove it or try to find an alternative way to cushion the blow. I mean, they were talking about a 5,000 naira cushion for people for transportation. But of course, there's the issue of
Uh-huh.
how you identify who does Shopper get 5,000 naira? Does Coyote get 5,000 naira to
Questions,
augment?
questions.
Yeah. So how do you determine who gets what? Do you limit it to people who don't own cars? Do you only give it to people who are taking public transportation? Is your public transportation network properly identified to where you can identify each downfall bus and taxi that's on the road? Do Ubers get it? So, it becomes an identity issue, but it still goes back to the fact that you have a single supplier of petroleum products in this country, and it ain't working.
All right, we've got messages coming in. Yele from Lekki says diesel from the depot yesterday is at an average of 400 naira per
There you go.
liter.
There you go.
Okay, then. Whilst Timothy, please pardon me for asking, but who received highly sulfuric fuel supplies?
Well, it's so again, NNPC brings it in, and they say it was contaminated from what they brought in.
Okay, and Michael at D22 says, I didn't know there was fuel scarcity until I got to work. Where I reside, Ipaja, no scarcity at all. All fuel stations are open and all are selling fuel. And that was something that was coming across yesterday because fuel scarcity was trending.
Right.
And so when you go and look at the trend, people are like, yeah, no fuel scarcity here on the mainland. I don't know what you island people are, are
Very
going
interesting.
through.
Thanks for sending that in. So Ipaja, at least some areas, that area is okay. We hope it doesn't spread though, because again, it's a supply issue that could spread.
Yeah, so my cab driver this morning, as he was we were driving, I was just asking him what the situation on the mainland was, and he was like, "Yeah, that seriously, nothing really. That where he, let's say a maximum of 6 cars would be in waiting in line, and so they weren't really feeling what people on the island were going through."
Wow.
We've got more. Gilbert from Festac says, we don't seem to learn from past mistakes. In October 1997, poisonous petrol circulated in Lagos and its environs. Many people were hospitalized. Now we're having this repeated situation. And Benga comes in with this last message saying, all those arguments that we're subsidizing the rich holds no water. Do you know how many people need fuel for generators? The poor use generators too. Check the statistics.
Yeah, but Benga, the thing is, how many poor people can afford to use generators depends on the size. So if you have larger generators that consume more, it's a volume game, Benga. That's the issue. So volumes are consumed more by wealthier people in Nigeria.
And Timothy says local refineries still our best option.
Indeed. And Dangote should have bought over Nigeria's refineries years ago, but maybe he wouldn't have bothered because they're in such a bad state. But it's him that this country is waiting for. Where he says by September it'll probably take off. Hopefully October, we'll see. But he will not. When Dangote's refinery comes on stream, the question now is that what will he be selling fuel for? He's gonna sell at a market price.
Because people keep going on about this thing like it's some sort of miracle cure that we're suddenly gonna see petrol all the way down. I'm not sure about that.
He's a private sector guy.
Capitalism doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
Business doesn't work that way.
So.
And maybe we should end on this because we've run out of time. But Ovis from Yaba says there's fuel scarcity in Yaba. Yaba is mainland. Thank you, Ovis, for that message.
Thanks. Please keep sending your messages and confirming this stuff. Thank you so much, everyone.
But this time around, you have to send your messages up on Twitter. Use that hashtag BusinessExpress981 and tag Rotus. You are?
Rotan Quotes, ROTANKWOT.
Up on Twitter. And that is that for Business Express Versus. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio.
Thank you.
Coming up, we've got great music for you. Watch out for Lamar 50/50 and some Amber Simone with Only You right here on Smooth.